I'll actually do it right now as I think of it. Yes. Here we go with the Friday show. Yes. Folks, we're live in just 6 minutes. 6 minutes with attorney Stephanie Murphy, the brilliant one. Yep. We are. Audio is good, says Gian. All right. Yes. Let's roll with this. Now, it's also police night, Road Patrol Live. This is we have a double header. We're going to start with the Westerly Police and then end up back in Cranston tonight. Now, that's a Facebook only, FB only. I know people ask, how come it just makes more sense that way. That's why. All right. We're going to be live in just a few moments. We're going to start with our special guest. Now, I will also be live 4:30 to 5. We've been going 4:30 to 5:30. Can't do it. Have to leave at 5 to get to Westerly. Ride with Westerly Police. It's going to be early. And then end up riding with Cranston Police. So it's a full police night is what it is. Yes, it is. Okay. That's interesting. All right. I'm going to do that at 2. I don't think I have enough. No, maybe I could. Remember, on Facebook, please share that you are watching. Boy, our YouTube audience has really grown. There's Robin. Yes. Big night ahead. Road Patrol Live with the police. It was so terrible last night at Woonsocket. Oh, my goodness. Oh, I hate stories like that. Oh, that poor little 3-year-old boy. Folks, so innocent. Riding. Struck and killed. There's Tammy and Angel. Good. Thank you, Jill D. Now, everybody on YouTube, as we're discovering more, we continue to expand on YouTube. On YouTube, you can either do a super chat, super sticker, or a super thanks. There we go. Now, anything to do with county retrial, we're going to save for more of the 4:30 time period. Maybe a little early today, but I can't do it all day, every day. But there are developments. There are developments we're going to talk about. But no, there's fortunately for some of us, there are other things in the news we'll talk about. Remember, hey, support. We have so much content. It's going to be a full weekend where we will be out with police folks. And those who haven't watched it, so we it's original content. People ask me, why do you ride with police? There's no delay. It's live. It is local. Thank you, Jill D. There we go. It is it's original content. Not everyone understands that, but that is original content. And anything can happen. But I am in the car. I have on the tactical gear. I have let's see, 1, 2. I have 5 bulletproof vests, but I wear there's one little more lightweight for the police. I did have one when I was in Ukraine and Poland, but that was heavier. Thank you, Judy Fury. It was a heavier one because the tactical gear, the bulletproof vests that they were custom made for me by Surplus Provisions. Those plates could withstand. They were so fantastic. Surplus Provisions in Cranston, they researched and found the Russian bullet for an AK. It's like this. It's like this big. It's actually it's about the size of your finger. So they had me wear plates that could withstand a Russian AK bullet. So, but it was they're heavy though, and I don't believe we're going to encounter any Russian AKs in this area. You never know. I don't think so. But for those that that haven't seen that, the videos are online. It was quite the experience. And the thing about it, folks, is when you've been in an area of conflict, when you've been in a war zone, you tend to absorb a lot more. Unless they have a weapon, you just kind of blank it out. All right, we're going to begin on this Friday. Good afternoon, one and all. Now, right now, at 1:06 on this Friday, June 27th, we are live. That's true. On AM 1380 and 99.9 FM. Now, you can listen anywhere in the world. I have one of my family members travels frequently to Vietnam and listens in Vietnam or different parts of, Southeast Asia. We had a couple of years ago, a very good friend of a guy I grew up with, actually, Chuck Cunningham. He used to listen in China. I don't know how he got that past the Chinese government, but if you log on to DePietro.com, it's right at the top, listen live. Now, we are obviously we're live on our Facebook page right now. We are live on our YouTube page, and we're also live on X. And people say, how can I support the program? Just by watching, following the page, sharing. I really like live, original content, and we, fine tune it at different times. This portion of our program is brought to you by PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center, 3688 Quaker Lane in North Kingstown. The weather is nice. The heat wave is broken. Have a little bit of rain, I believe, tomorrow. Of course it's going to rain. It's a Saturday. Folks, PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Stop in. Annuals, perennials, trees, and shrubs. They have hanging pots, 10-inch, 12-inch moss baskets, hanging impatiens, pansy, marigold bags, large selection of beautiful patio pots. They have it all. Screen, loom, and mulch are available. Pickup and delivery. Full-scale nursery. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. They're open 7 days a week. 3688 Quaker Lane in North Kingstown. They crank it. They have been such longtime supporters of mine. They have friends of mine. And again, I've been saying it all week. Condolences to go out to Debbie, who's so talented, so terrific. Folks, they grind it. It's not easy. They're open 7 days a week. They open in March. Note their next day off will be Christmas Day. That's what we have in common. But her dad passed away this week, so condolences still go out. But stop in and see them, because I think it's a full-scale nursery. It's Rhode Island's #1 garden center. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center right off of Route 4. Now, check out DePietro.com. We have all our video up, most of it. We're really going to start to rejuvenate, but check it out. That's also a good way to reach me. If you go to DePietro.com, you just click Contact Juan. We also have our online store. We also have all of the radio shows right there in library fashion. DePietro.com, which is brought to you by the Cohasset Inn, 226 Cohasset Avenue in West Warwick. Remember, lunch, dinner, I'll meet you for drinks in the lounge. They're waiting for you at the Cohasset Inn. Now, folks, who knows? You may need legal advice. You may need an attorney, and I have the attorney for you. If you call her and say, "Hi, Stephanie, I'm a friend of the show," that's our code. Contact. They are fantastic. You never know when you may be in need of legal guidance, legal advice. Happens a lot. Marin, Barrett, and Murphy, criminal defense lawyers, 50 years combined criminal defense experience. Remember, your fight becomes their fight. Put the full weight of the firm behind every case. Call them. And remember, just say friend of the show is the code word. 401-228-8271. And you can also find them. They have very good social media presence on both Facebook and Instagram. So, and let's bring her on, because I'd like to go through some of the different legal stories. And there's a lot of different unusual ones. I like to find ones that I almost think sometimes someone is, they are unaware that they're actually getting themselves in trouble. All right, let's bring her on. And it's the one and only Stephanie Murphy. Good afternoon, Stephanie.
Hi, John. How are you?
Good. There we go. All right, Stephanie, let's start off. I've talked, obviously we have talked, I should say, parent Karen Reed trial, and obviously, it's more than a week out. The jury has spoken. I'm just curious and want to open the floor to you. Any thoughts or anything that has kind of come into your mind regarding that? It's the biggest trial in this area in a very long time. Actually, became big case story around the country. Any closing thoughts you have on the Karen Reed trial?
Yeah, well, as a defense attorney, and I'm listening to all the comments that some of these jurors are making, I'm pleasantly surprised and happy at the comments they're making, regardless of my feelings of the verdict and everything like that. I'm happy about the thought that they put into it. As a defense attorney, you really want the jurors to understand that the burden's on the government to prove everything beyond a reasonable doubt. And some of their comments are, just tying that all together, and that they held the government to a very, very high standard. There's so many times when I have jury trials that if I speak to the jurors afterwards, it's kind of like, oh, I wish the defense presented a case, or I wish the defense did this. So in these comments, I am pleasantly surprised and happy as a criminal defense attorney that they took their job seriously and held the government to their high burden.
Are you surprised at how much this jury is speaking out? The jury foreman, we've now learned, he actually has retained a PR agency, a pretty prominent one in Boston, to apparently represent him.
I am surprised. I feel like in my experience with jurors, like once they've done their job, there's people that are going to be happy with them and people that are not going to be happy with them. And my experience is they typically kind of fade away into the background, but it doesn't seem so in this case. No, right? It's becoming a life of their own.
Now, Stephanie, also for those looking ahead, now the O'Keefes, the family, they have filed a wrongful death suit against Karen Reed. I think we've even talked about it. That is much different. And what I think would be an interesting dynamic here is what we saw. I'll use the blueprint of the O.J. Simpson case, where he did have to testify in the wrongful death suit. So what people I don't think fully get is, so many people are saying, the case is over. It is true. She was found not guilty, can't be charged for that stuff again. But the civil case, the wrongful death, that's a much different scenario in court.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be depositions, there's going to be interrogatories, requests for productions of documents. The standard, as we're all well aware, is a lot different. And I think the OJ analogy is a great one, found not guilty in the criminal courts and then found responsible in the civil courts. So I think it's going to be very, very, very interesting. And it'll be interesting to see what comes out in the interrogatories and the depositions and all of that. So it'll be another fact-finding way, but can't be used against her.
Now, also, I can recall the OJ civil case, and that actually took place in a Santa Monica courtroom because he lived in Brentwood. The city of Los Angeles made the decision. They could have tried him in Brentwood, in Santa Monica. They have a beautiful courthouse there that I've been to, but instead they said, no, we're going to do this in downtown Los Angeles. But Stephanie, OJ, a couple things. Can people go in and view a civil trial? And what I recall is OJ, he didn't take the stand in the courtroom. It was all in a conference room and in depositions.
Right. So that's normally what happens. And in civil cases, you're able to kind of use depositions and that testimonial deposition in court and in the case. Unlike in a criminal case where you have a confrontation right and these witnesses have to come in and testify. In the civil cases, it's a lot more relaxed, and depositions, interrogatories, all of those things can come in a lot easier than in a criminal case.
And then if you could also touch on who will decide this wrongful death that the O'Keefes have filed? Will it be a jury? Could it be a bench trial? Who traditionally?
I think traditionally
go ahead.
It's jurors that will traditionally decide, but if the attorneys reach an agreement of something else, but typically I think a case like this, you definitely, if I was a civil attorney in this case, either side, I think I'd want a jury. Absolutely.
And one last question. If you could just touch on, the burden is lower and new things can come in. For instance, in the OJ trial, we had heard about Bruno Mali's shoes. And after the criminal trial, there was someone in New York who was a photographer that found a picture of O.J. Simpson crossing 3rd Avenue actually, when I lived in New York, OJ had a condo about 6 or 7 blocks from me. But a picture of him crossing Third Avenue right down from Bloomingdale's, wearing the Bruno Mali shoes. The reason I asked that is in the civil trial, it doesn't have to be, my understanding, a blueprint of the criminal trial. They could introduce potentially new evidence.
Right. They can introduce new evidence or even old evidence that for whatever reason the prosecution didn't want to introduce in the criminal trial. I know there were several witnesses that maybe got paid to talk to the press or a book deal. So the government didn't want to call them in the O.J. Simpson case because it would look like they weren't being, a neutral witness. But in the civil case, it is really a lot different. Newly discovered evidence can come in and old evidence that maybe the government just decided not to call that witness.
Now, one final question. Because the criminal trial is over, Karen Read has not spoken out. Is that potentially, no, we don't know the why. There's a lot of speculation that she's trying to negotiate like a paid interview. And that's legal. There's nothing wrong with that. But if she were to do some interviews, could that be introduced in a civil trial, meaning that even though she's out of criminal, she can't be tried for that again. She was found not guilty, but potentially if she said something, that could be used in the wrongful death suit.
Yep, absolutely. And, anything can, in civil cases, a lot more comes in because of just a lower standard. So anything she has said, will say, anything like that, that can definitely be part of a civil case. So hopefully she's keeping that in mind if she does do an interview, that there is a civil case coming. And, all these things can be introduced or used to support, her theory or to support, the plaintiff's side.
Final question on this. With OJ, he was found guilty. If you could once again just touch on it's a lesser burden wrongful death. Some people may not get that, but it's a lesser burden. How would that come into play with Karen Read being sued by the O'Keefe family?
So they don't have to prove that she actually did the killing or anything like that. But what they have to prove is that, there's some contribution or negligence in the killing of Mr. O'Keefe in terms of showing that, she has some sort of negligence on her. So it's more of a negligence standard that, maybe she didn't do something or follow up, or he could have sought medical help and she didn't facilitate that. It can also be in terms of intoxication, the bar, her dropping him off, what she knew at the time he got out of the car, how many drinks she had, how many drinks he had. So it's really a lot different.
All right. Now, some other legal stories. And for those that are watching, I'm going to talk about it more later this afternoon at 4:30. Stephanie, this story of this mother in Foxborough, I think is a good example that sometimes people, they may not realize the jeopardy they're putting themselves in. Apparently, it's a youth hockey game. This is some mother, hockey mom, somewhat aggressive, but actually follows the hockey refs into the locker room, and there's some kind of confrontation, and she is, she's in trouble legally.
Yeah, no, I looked at the story and I was familiar with it, but it is really interesting. I think, but for her actions of following them into a locker room, if this exchange happened right outside the game, I think it's the whole totality of the circumstances of her seeking them out in a locker room instead of just maybe having words. I don't think there's ever an appropriate time for parents or anyone to talk to a referee like that. But I think the totality of the circumstances of seeking them out, following them in, it just kind of elevates her whole intent of what she wanted to have happen on that. But I know there was a touching and, the yelling and everything like that. So the totality of everything that she did that day, it's definitely an issue.
I think it's interesting that someone may say, they touched me, and I like how you pointed out, she's the one that followed them into the locker room. And I know sometimes there'll be an example of there's a soccer game or a baseball game or even a football game, and you have parents that get worked up. And I've had this where they reach out to me and say, I just wanted to ask them a question, whoever ref the game. And then when I talk to the police, I say, okay, but you followed them half a mile to their car. You were pursuing them. This wasn't, hey, I have a quick question. I just see that as an example of someone, they may have gone with the best intentions. They just want to see their son play hockey. But you can't behave way, whether or not you like the penalty. Our
I know
next story.
a lot of
Go
my,
ahead.
what I just add is a lot of my kids play sports, and like a lot of,
Yep.
they have a 24-hour rule where if you're unhappy with something, you need to sit on it for 24, 72 hours before you approach a coach, before you approach the league, or even possibly like reach out to like, the refs to see if you can get clarification. I really kind of think that, moment of, okay, I'm upset, but letting those emotions die down. And then if there is an issue, you could talk a lot more calmly. And I think that's a good rule for everybody in terms of sporting events.
I received an email from one of our viewers, Emily, who said that she's concerned Rhode Island's going to have a new law. I believe that Rhode Island's going to enact a law that's going to ban declawing of cats. So apparently she has a couple moved here. I don't really know where she moved from, but the cats are already declawed. The question from Emily is, how do they enforce that? And how could someone how could someone say, how do they prove that someone didn't have the cat declawed in another state where it's legal?
So I think when I looked into, that new law that might pass, I think it's much more about the vets and them declawing the animal than on the owner. So I think if there's a ban, no vet is going to be able to declaw a cat. So in order of records, they can prove when it was done and stuff like that. But the punishment seems to be either suspension or revocation of the vet's or the facility's license. I didn't really see anything about the owners getting in trouble for it. It's more just not allowing the procedure to get done at an animal hospital.
The next story, to me, this is just so tragic because, it's the old story, young people and they get behind the wheel and it's an allure to drive fast. And you have a youth, 16 years old in Cranston, and apparently on the phone and going fast around a corner, and forever, lives are changed. I'm curious, your reaction on the story and potential, it's liability on the family of,
Right.
Let's face it, that young man 16 years old should not have been, he really even shouldn't have been driving at that time.
Right. Yeah, I heard that, at the time of the accident, the license was somewhere where there's a curfew and everything like that. But my understanding is that he was going about 74 and a 25. So nothing good is ever going to happen with that. I mean, ever. So right now, I think he's getting charged criminally in family court. So with family court, it's not really about punishing the person, just kind of making sure that this doesn't happen again. So it's not a punishment court. But I don't think he'll have his license for a really long time. The family court only has jurisdiction of a minor until they're 19. So even if they turn 18, the family court only has jurisdiction of them over 19. So no punishment could last more than the age of 19. So it's kind of interesting. Family court has a very small window to kind of impose a punishment. Whereas if it was an adult court, you could have years, So it is just a really sad situation. And the family, it's tragic.
I come back to, to me, parents, you can't be the bestie. You can't be the friend. To me, sometimes being a parent is you have to kind of protect the child from, they don't even recognize, understand.
Right. When they're that young,
they could be putting
you don't
themselves
realize the consequences of your actions
right.
as much. But, I have teenagers and, there's different rules and stuff I have in place. But I feel now with parents, they do kind of have a little bit more control over what's going on in their kid's car, meaning like different applications, different car applications, like 360. Sure. So there are kind of ways to watch it, but it's still just not only is he getting in trouble criminally, not only is there a death, but the civil cases are going to be huge and parents have insurance. But when you have a teenage driver, and it's just a really sad situation. So it's going to be criminal, civil, and my heart's just break for everyone involved.
Folks, now it's time for Murphy's Law. This is a story that attorney Stephanie Murphy has found. What do you have for us this week, Stephanie?
So I know I always keep bringing this up, but I'm kind of fascinated by the Brian Kohberger case.
Yes.
There was a motion to delay, and that got denied. And then also the defense team put in a motion to go forward with alternate people who could have committed this crime. and everything really kind of got denied. So this case is moving forward in August. He's facing the death penalty, unlike any cases that would happen in Rhode Island State Court. I just find it very interesting. You know, is this going to be something where after all the defense's motions are kind of denied and the trial's going to start, you know, is there going to be some sort of an offer where if he pled, he would avoid the death penalty, but if he goes forward, I just, from my point of view and what I've seen, I just think the evidence is very clear that he could be found guilty of it. So I'm just interested in the defense attorney's strategies. If there's more motions or if all the motions get denied, will there actually be a trial, or will they resolve it short of the death penalty?
Right, and we'll also keep an eye on the Diddy verdict and how that's.
Oh, yeah, right, absolutely.
So, folks, again, she is attorney Stephanie Murphy. Remember, call. People never realize that suddenly they are in need of some legal advice. Stephanie, keep up the great work, and we'll talk to you again.
Hey, thanks, Sean. Talk to you soon. Bye.
All right, folks, there it is. Again, attorney Stephanie Murphy on this Friday. So, again, I also want to mention, I know, obviously, there's a number of people that love some of the goings-on with the Karen Read trial. We're going to tackle that. I'm starting to compartmentalize a little bit. We're going to talk about that later this afternoon. That's really the design of the 4:30 program, because there is fallout from it. There is definitely some developments with that. So, folks, I also want to remind you, I did received an email from, Kyle. Kyle asked me, who's the roof company that I recommend? Apparently, he had some roof damage done. Kyle, contact Roofco Rhode Island, 401-868-7149. 401-868-7149. Roofco Rhode Island. Remember, a new roof improves the value of the structure, whether it's your home or business. Roofco Rhode Island, whether it's wind damage, leaky roof, missing lifted or curled shingles, granules in the gutter. Roofco Rhode Island. Call them for a free estimate. 401-868-7149. 401-868-7149 for Roofco Rhode Island. I also want to mention this portion of our program of John DePietro Live brought to you by Propane Plus. For all your propane needs, call them 401-885-4209. In Massachusetts, 508-252-3359 for Propane Plus. For all your heating and cooling, always online at propaneplus.com. You just type in your zip code. I want to touch on, I'll talk a little bit about the situation with the Karen Read trial and some of the fallout. I think it's interesting with the, as far as what I think is interesting is that the foreperson on the jury, who has no name, but the foreperson has retained a PR agency, and a pretty well-known one in Boston, in Regan Communications. That's unusual, but the end result of it that I think is interesting with that is the fact that NBC 10 Boston, not Providence, but Boston, they carry Canton Confidential and blah, blah, blah. They have a headline, foreman on the jury, foreman of the says Karen Read is innocent. That's to me, I mean, if you're a PR firm and you're trying to sell a narrative, that's the narrative you want. That's the headline you want. Now, this afternoon, and also going forward, we're going to walk through why the Free Karen Read movement should actually face, and it's very possible this could be going on. I don't know if it's going on. It should be going on. I'm going to reach out. I think it's worth kicking the tires on, but it's probably actually federal statutes and laws that should come into play, because the Free Karen Read movement was actually formed, my interpretation, it was formed as a criminal enterprise. Now, someone could say, what are you talking about? Well, let's talk about it. There's a chain of command. They conspired to commit criminal acts. The Free Karen Read movement, at its core, it was really about witness intimidation. Let me give you an example. Now, someone could say, "What? No, that was set up just to alert the public about this woman and blah, blah, blah. I don't believe that. You have a chain of command. They conspire together, and the mission is criminal acts. It was formed to commit witness intimidation, to go after witnesses, to intimidate them, to try to prevent them from testifying. That's what it's really about. Now, there are some people that are naive. There's some people that won't understand what I'm talking about. Obviously, her followers. But let me point to an example. I like to use Breaking Bad, right? As Hank is investigating Gus Fring and says maybe the biggest meth lab north of the border. What do his colleagues say? No, Gus. No, he sells chicken. Paulo Samanos. No, he runs fast food. He's not involved with drugs. He's not involved with meth. No, that's what the outside is. But on that show, Breaking Bad, that could be RICO statute. It's a criminal conspiracy. Gus, Mike, Jesse, Walt, they're underlings. There's a chain of command. What are they in the business of? Producing, distributing, selling meth. So now that may, some people, I guarantee you won't get that. But it's, what's the purpose of the organization? I believe the way it should be looked at, the Free Karen Read movement should actually, everyone's been saying the Massachusetts State Police. I believe that this is really more of a matter for the U.S. Attorney of Massachusetts and the FBI, because this is racketeering. This is racketeering conspiracy. And make no mistake about it, the prison terms are much more severe. In the federal system, RICO isn't used a lot. But the core of the organization is that of criminal acts. That is the nature of how it came together. That's what the parties have in common. Witness intimidation. You know, many years ago, I covered a case of witness intimidation. And I'm going to tell you about it in just a moment. So, and it's not exactly like this, but it opened my eyes and it changed the way things are done. Because it can be a very, very serious situation. But folks, this portion of the program, remember, if disaster strikes, whether you're fire, flood, mold, ServPro of Providence. They're available 24/7. When disaster strikes, contact ServPro Providence, 401-941-5500. Water damage, fire, they're available 24/7. Let's just say you own a company, you have a business, and you have a fire, and it's 3 a.m. Call ServPro Providence, 401-941-5500. Fast, boom, they're in action. Maybe you have a flood, pipe burst, disaster hits. That's who I would call. ServPro of Providence, 401-941-5500. Several years ago, there was someone that was shot and killed in South Providence. And at the time it happened, I think his name was Hector. Anyhow, there was a young girl, and she was in her kitchen in South Providence. And she was cooking soup. And she was like, I think 13, 14. Her name was Jennifer Rivera. And all of a sudden on a Saturday afternoon, she heard gunshots. And she knew what the sound of gunshots sounded like. She looked out the window of her South Providence apartment. I think it was on Congress Street. And she saw someone that she recognized as Manny Pona hopping a fence and then going off down the street. So Hector was found dead. You have an eyewitness, no video. Eyewitness sees Manny Pona hopping a fence. Now, they found, a little later, they found a Grand Cherokee Jeep burned out. But a fingerprint of Manny Pona was found on the Jeep, and they found his pager. He thought it had burned. So anyhow, so the state is bringing Manny Pona up on murder charges. They have an eyewitness. They recovers his print at a Jeep right near the scene that was then set ablaze. I believe she saw him running to and getting in the Jeep and driving away. So the night before this trial, Jennifer Rivera was sitting out on her front steps, hanging out with some, either on her alone or with a friend. Sunday night, trial was going to start Monday. So somebody pulls up who knew her and said, hey, come on over. I want to show you something. They go around the corner and Manny Pona comes out, bang, executes her on the spot. Now, I made a huge deal about this. A 14, 15-year-old girl executed in her neighborhood because the next morning she was going to testify in a murder trial. Now, I understand that's an extreme example, but I pushed back. And by the way, I went nuts. You know who the Attorney General was at the time? Sheldon Whitehouse. Sheldon Whitehouse, who's now Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Bailey's All-White Beach Club. I went ballistic on that case. I led the charge on that case. I went to the wake. I went to the funeral. The family thanked me. If she were Caucasian, lived in Borington, lived in Wellesley, she would have had protection. As a result of Jennifer Rivera, they changed the provisions of how they protect witnesses. She needed protection. She didn't get it. So the whole element, now that's an extreme example of witness intimidation. They literally killed the witness the night before the trial. But witness intimidation is a very serious crime. Now, the individuals that were involved in luring her around the corner, I didn't pull the trigger, but they conspired to take her life. I didn't know Manny was going to do that. You drove him. I just thought he wanted to talk to her. You're the one that said, hey, you knew her, whatever his name was. You're the one that lured her around the corner, and then he popped her. So I'll talk about this later, but the Free Karen Read movement, keep in mind that you already have Teleprompter Boy, right? He's up on witness intimidation. I believe where this is going, and I'm going to talk about this more this afternoon, but it's kind of out there it's out there that Karen Read won't do an interview with Teleprompter Boy, right? So much that then one of the attorneys. But here's what's out there. Here's what I believed happened with that relationship, and where I believe they're both actually in a lot of trouble. Because from what I understand, notice like that embarrassing video he released. I did not have anything promised to me. I understand, totally written for him by a lawyer, recorded to put out there. There was no agreement that she would come on with. What is that? Teleprompter Boy. I'll tell you what that is I'm pretty confident that they have evidence where there was a quid pro quo in place that is going to be very damaging in charges, actually against both of them. But it was akin to, this is my understanding of someone briefed on the matter. It was akin to, if you do this, I'll give you that. For instance, if you harass and go up to Jen McCabe, I'll give you the autopsy photos that you can publish. If you harass Michael Proctor, I will give you, this type of evidence. That defense gets everything in discovery. So it's my understanding there could be communication that, if you do this and I get away with it, I will give you a big interview, I'll whatever, blah, blah, blah. My point is, notice he's trying to dispel, Teleprompter Boy, he's trying to dispel the notion that there was a quid pro quo. But from my understanding, they have evidence that shows it was like Pavlov's dog. It was a reward system. You publish this, and then you get that. It was like an item list. I have autopsy photos. I have, Google search information. I have blah, 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 all this defense stuff. If you do this, then you get that. You do this, you get that. You want the autopsy photos, you're going to have to do it. Now, that's a quid pro quo. You are arranging, the way it was explained to me by an attorney, you are arranging kind of almost a form of payment. But it's not, money. It's if you commit this criminal act, try to intimidate this person, you will be rewarded. But I find it very interesting that someone comes out and does that, whatever that is, hostage video. There was no agreement with Karen Read and her attorneys. Pause. Look serious. I did not get promised. Why was it written by an attorney? Why are you doing interviews with an attorney? And by the way, news alert, spoiler alert, that's not investigative journalism. That's not how it works. That's not investigating. That's conspiracy of a criminal act. Criminal act. That's what it is. Investigative journalism. Yeah, okay. Folks, now I do want to talk about what's going on in New York, because it's actually very important, especially to us in the Northeast, really around the country. But let me stay on schedule. This portion of the program, pause, is, see, Biden's not the only one that reads a teleprompter. This portion of the program, now remember, maybe you're thinking of redoing your home, you have a special project. Arch Design Builders. That's right, blink twice, teleprompter boy. Blink twice, 401-207-4124. Set up an appointment. Maybe you are thinking if you'd like redo your kitchen, redo your bathroom, basement, deck, or special project. Arch Design Builders. I want to introduce you to my friends, Ed and Roxanne. This is high-end, custom build, spectacular customer service, Arch Design Builders. Excuse me. Call Roxanne, 401-218-9707. I share their social media stuff is great. Arch Design Builders, 401-218-9707. I want to also just touch on, and again, good afternoon, everybody. We are live right now, AM 1380, 99.9 FM. We're live on X. We're live on YouTube. We're live on Facebook. Remember, if you miss it, you can watch it on demand. You just type in #replay. And I will be live at 4:30, not for full hour, just for a half hour. We've started now, live 4:30. Again, with that, it's Facebook, YouTube, and X. You're on Facebook. Make sure you follow the page. Help us achieve our June goal as far as sending stars. And then also on YouTube, obviously, appreciate all the support. You also, maybe you're watching on X or listening to the radio. We have the Cash App and the Venmo. I also want to point out, it's very significant. The winner of there's two things that are in the news that are very significant. One is that President Trump has now been successful with the Supreme Court about this whole business of birthright citizenship. People misunderstand that. People misinterpret that. There are full-fledged programs. In Russia, they have a program. You pay them, you go through them like a travel agent, and you deliver. They set it up so you deliver and have a baby in Miami. So they encourage all these Russians. They encourage them to do that. You give birth. You're 9 months pregnant. They have a program. You pay them. They set up the whole thing, and then you give birth. And what do they say? Oh, my child's an American citizen. There are programs like that. There are certain states they go to, and in Rhode Island, it's very costly, like other states, because in Rhode Island they're very generous with Medicare. Is it Medicaid or Medicare? One of the two. I always confuse them. But you come here, you come to Rhode Island or Mass when you're 9 months pregnant, and then you deliver. And what do they say? Oh, my child's an American citizen, and so the mother stays, and then what does that mean? It means the grandparents come and blah, blah, blah. I still come away from, if you're on vacation in pick a country, Mexico, and give birth, I don't think you say, well, it looks like we have to live in Mexico now because my child's a Mexican. No. You're an American who happened to give birth in Mexico. So what happens? You fly back to the United States and live there. So the Supreme Court has ruled in his favor. But the mayor of New York City, that primary race, this is something to watch, especially in our part of the country, the Northeast, of which people are leaving in droves. The mayor of New York City that won the primary, this guy, he wants to have government-run supermarkets. Think about that. Government-run supermarkets. Is there anyone that's impressed with government-run anything? I always like, in 2012, Mitt Romney used government-run facilities as an example of with cell phones. And he said, if the government ran and was in charge of cell phones, they'd still be the size of a shoebox. The reason why cell phones continue to get better, more efficient, sharper, they just keep improving all the time, is because it's competition. The guy who won the Democrat primary for mayor of New York, he wants government-run supermarkets, government-run grocery stores. What do you think would happen with that? They'd all become unionized workers. Service would be terrible. Not only that, how would you like certain people telling you, we're not going to carry that anymore. We don't think it's healthy. We don't like the way that's prepared. What if you want to go to the grocery store and you want to buy Pop-Tarts and you want to buy Doritos and you want to buy Coca-Cola? That is your business. Or conversely, you want really good fresh produce. You want great deli meats. I love all the prepared meals they have now. He wants government-run grocery stores. New York City already has grocery stores. Why shouldn't it be government-run? You have to go with the selection that's there. The other thing, the mayor, he won the primary in New York. He wants a $30 an hour minimum wage. If you're a business owner, how would you feel about that? He believes in distribution of wealth. Now, here's the problem. You know who supports this type of candidate? AOC, Elizabeth Warren, Senator Markey, Kamala Harris, and even former disgraced Massachusetts U.S. Attorney Rachel Rollins. AOC, Elizabeth Warren, Rachel Rollins, Markey, they support something like that. They support a government-run supermarket. They would support $30 minimum wage, redistribution of wealth. Do you realize that right now, Wall Street, all the Wall Street firms are saying, if this guy comes into power, we're out of here. We are leaving and going to Texas or Florida or a more business-friendly state. But this brings us back to the Karen Read trial. As teleprompter boy, can you imagine touting, look how great Rachel Rollins said I did a great job. How embarrassing. Elizabeth Warren told me I did a great job. Like, you're proud of that. Senator AOC said, Turtle, great job. You're proud of that. Rachel Rollins is a fraud. All right, folks, I'm going to come back to that. We're going to touch on that coming up at 4:30. But remember, it's all about staying healthy. It's all about keeping yourself healthy, keeping your family healthy. It's all about my health. And joining us right now she was there just a moment ago. And she disappeared. All right, I'm sure she'll pop back. We're going to bring on Marie for It's My Health, 1099, Mendon Road in Cumberland. There we go. All right. Joining us right now is the Queen of Health, and it's our friend Marie. Good afternoon, Marie.
Hi, John. How are you? Sorry I've missed you the last couple of weeks. It's been crazy busy.
I know. You have a lot of fans, people asking. You have such a loyal following out there. Marie, what do you have for us on this Friday?
I've been crazy busy, so I'm going to leave it up to you. Are there any questions? Because I don't have anything prepared today.
Yes. As far as change of season, you have
Mm-hmm.
people, obviously, dehydration, staying cool. But on top of that, a lot of people are interested in a lot of the local products that you carry and a lot of the healthy local products that you carry. I'm always
Yep.
fascinated. My son, is very, very cautious about what he eats, and he'll always do a shot of honey before he goes to the gym to work out. You
Mm-hmm.
you carry local honey and you praise the benefits of honey.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, we carry Betty's honey. She's been a beekeeper forever, and her dad before her. And we really love her honey. And it is good. It's good to have every single day, especially if you have allergies and you're having local honey. You're getting that natural pollen, and your body gets to know it's not an enemy, and it can react better to the pollen when it's environmental and when it's in the air. So, and it's also good energy. And honey never goes bad, even if it crystallizes. They've found 2,000-year-old honey in Egypt, and it never goes bad unless
Wow.
when you buy it in the supermarket and they've pasteurized it. Now they've killed all the good enzymes. So it's
Right.
good to have local honey, wherever, close by, wherever you live. Doesn't have to be like, if you got something in northern Rhode Island and you lived in the center of the state, it's going to be fine. But you don't want something that comes from, say, Ohio, because they're going to have different plants and different pollens. So it's good
Right.
to have something that's at least in your general area.
Now, Marie, you also carry, and people, this time of year, they may be a little more active. They decide, hey, I'm on vacation. I'm going to play tennis, even though, and they may get some aches and pains or get hurt. You carry tremendous selection of hemp and CBD products.
We do. And one of my recommendations, especially if you're doing something you haven't done a lot of and you're going to be using muscles you haven't in a while, you could take some arnica, which is a homeopathic remedy. You can take it before, and then you can take it after. And that will help with any kind of muscle pain. It'll give you the ability to get on with life, and not be quite so sore. And of course, drinking plenty of fluids to make sure that you don't get dehydrated. Maybe some electrolytes, would be good as well. And this, the kind of weather we've had this week.
Now, Marie, also, a lot of people think of tea and they think of it something, hot that you have, but actually, you have a tremendous selection. Many things the only way to find them would be online somewhere, but they can buy them local. Delicious iced tea that not only soothe the body, it's also delicious, but it's good for you.
Yeah, I have a lot of herbalists who come in, and yes, I had somebody who got a whole bunch of things, and especially throughout the summer, making teas and then putting them in the fridge and then combining some things to make some really tasty teas to drink during the summer with those herbs that are really good. I do one that I brew up hawthorn berries, hawthorn leaf, and hibiscus. So it comes out a nice red color, and it tastes like cranberry juice, but it's really good for the cardiovascular system. And the more you do it, the more regularly you do it, you're going to see some really good benefits. But it's easy to drink, and I drink it cold because I like it. I like it that way. So I
Yep.
make it and I stick it in the fridge, and then I have enough for a couple of days. And very tasty. And we have lots of combinations like that you can do. Some things we can help people to combine some things, or we have some combination teas. So it's pretty easy once you get used to it.
There's the expression, heavy is the head that wears the crown. Do you feel an extra burden that I have dubbed you the Queen of Health?
No, nope, no burden. I'm happy to help people in any way that I can. So answering questions and meeting with people is the best way to do that.
All right. Now, folks, It's My Health, 1099 Mendon Road in Cumberland. Marie, what are your hours for today, this Friday? And what about tomorrow? What's going on tomorrow at It's My Health? Super Saturday.
Well, not a whole lot. We do have Pilates tomorrow morning, but it's pretty quiet as we're coming into, that vacation season. But we're here till 5:30 today, and I'll be here from 9 to 4 tomorrow.
You are the queen of health. Keep up the great work and say hello to the luckiest man in the world for me.
Thank you, John. Have a great weekend.
All right, folks, isn't she just fantastic? Our friend Maria, it's My Health, 1099 Mendon Road in Cumberland. If you're on Mendon Road right now, pop in that historic white church with the flag. She is so knowledgeable. She's incredibly knowledgeable. And I think more people are discovering that you don't have to take a pill for everything. There's so many things you can do. There's a lot of natural ingredients. Honey is one of them. Honey, mushrooms are fantastic. Folks, it's My Health, 1099 Mendon Road in Cumberland. Now, I did receive an email from Barbara. Barbara they want to resurface their basketball court and asked me, who is that company? Your husband heard me mention. Barbara, contact Corey at Quality Asphalt Seal Coating, 401-283-9815. 401-283-9815. Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. Sport court resurfacing, pickleball, tennis, basketball court. They'll epoxy garages and patios. Free estimate. They do decorative concrete flooring. Now, if you're a business owner and you have a parking lot, they do line striping. They can do pothole repair. Call Corey. Free estimate. Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. They have really good social media. 401-283-9815. Quality Asphalt Seal Coating. Well, folks, good afternoon. I also want to remind you, Watson Materials. Sean is just the best, largest selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island. Call them, request a quote, 401-885-0600. 401-885-0600. Landscape lighting, pavers, retaining walls, natural stone, complete selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island. It's Watson Materials. 401-885-0600. Sean's another one. They have a very good social media presence. So, folks, for the remaining part of this Friday afternoon, now a lot of the media sign off. That's it. See you Monday, everybody. We don't operate that way. I will be live at 4:30. It's going to be a little bit cut short because tonight, summer season Road Patrol Live kicks off. I ride with police. There are some people, I see the haters out there. He rides around with a police radio. No, I'm in the cruiser with the officer, you nitwit. No, with the police. So when it's a double header tonight, where we're going to be with the Westerly Police, who knows? That's right where Taylor Swift's mansion is. And then also we'll be with the Cranston Police. We've never done two police departments on the same night, but this is the kickoff. Remember on Channel 56, it was either Channel 56 or 38 used to have the creature double feature where they'd show back-to-back, King Kong, Godzilla, that type of thing. So this is a double feature, Road Patrol Live. I'm right in the passenger seat, and I'm riding with the police. And whatever happens, happens. If there's, who knows? Anything that can happen, and we are live. That will be only on Facebook, simply because we want the quality to be sharp. TikTok doesn't allow you. I may explore being live on YouTube as well at some point. We may explore that. But it's all on whether or not what the quality of the broadcast is. All right. Now, folks, if you're listening, I want to thank Gian. Great week. Folks, the beat goes on. We continue. It's a search for justice. It's a search for the truth. Make sure you visit DePietro.com. Thank you to all of our supporters. If you're listening to the radio, stay tuned for the 2 o'clock news. If you're watching on X or Facebook or YouTube, we're going to be back at 4:30, and the Road Patrol summer season kicks off tonight.